Jungkook reveals his wedding plans, but Jimin's shocking response leaves him speechless. A secret fight breaks BTS apart, until Taehyung says the unthinkable. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life, Jungkook." Jimin's voice echoed off the cold studio walls, sharp and bitter like glass, cracking under pressure. The air in the rehearsal room, once filled with the steady rhythm of dance and sweat, now hung heavy with a suffocating silence. Jungkook stood frozen, his chest rising and falling rapidly, the breath he tried to catch slipping away like sand through fingers. He had only wanted to share his happiness. That was all. A quiet moment during practice, a pause in the music, a smile that tugged at his lips as he looked at his brothers, not just bandmates, but his family, and said with trembling sincerity, "I'm getting married." The words had barely landed when Jimin had dropped his water bottle, its clang against the floor almost as loud as the tension that erupted next. Taehyung had gone still mid-stretch. Namjoon's brow furrowed. Yoongi looked down. And Jimin had exploded. Now, hours later, Jungkook sat alone in the dim rehearsal room, his back pressed against the mirror, knees pulled up to his chest. His hoodie, soaked with sweat and something warmer, darker grief, confusion, clung to his skin. He wiped at his face, but the tears had already betrayed him, carving wet trails down his cheeks. He didn't understand. Wasn't this supposed to be good news? The lights buzzed overhead. The city of Seoul hummed just beyond the window, alive with its indifference to his heartbreak. He had replayed Jimin's words 100 times since the fight, trying to decode the venom behind them. "You don't even know who you are anymore." The accusation cut deeper than any blade. Jungkook clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms. Maybe Jimin was right. Maybe he didn't know. But why had it felt like Jimin's anger wasn't really about the wedding? Why had his voice cracked, eyes glistening, as if he were hiding something else behind that fury? Their friendship, once effortless, full of inside jokes and late-night confessions, had been fraying for months. Silent withdrawals, forced smiles, lingering glances when they thought no one noticed. Jungkook had hoped this news might bridge whatever distance had formed between them. Instead, it detonated everything. The door creaked open behind him. He didn't look up. "Go away," Jungkook muttered, voice hoarse. Footsteps approached anyway, measured, hesitant, carrying the weight of someone who had seen too much but still came back. A familiar cologne drifted through the air, earthy, warm, comforting in a way Jungkook didn't expect. "You think Jimin's the one who doesn't understand," Taehyung said softly, stopping just behind him. "But maybe you're the one keeping secrets." Jungkook stiffened. The words struck something raw in him, something he'd buried so deeply he almost forgot it existed. He turned, finally meeting Taehyung's eyes in the mirror. "What do you mean?" His voice was a whisper, terrified and trembling. Taehyung's expression didn't change. Calm, knowing, like he'd been waiting for this moment. "You're not marrying her because you love her," he said quietly. "You're marrying her to forget." The room went still. Jungkook's mouth opened, but no sound came out. His vision blurred, not from the tears this time, but from the weight of a truth he could no longer outrun. In the silence that followed, the world inside him finally shattered. "Say it, Jungkook. Just fucking say it." Jimin's voice tore through the hallway like a gunshot. Loud, raw, cracked with a fury that had fermented too long. Behind him, the door to the practice room still swung slightly ajar from the force with which Jungkook had thrown it open moments earlier. The sound of it hitting the wall echoed like a second heartbeat. Jungkook turned sharply. His jaw clenched so tight it looked painful. His chest heaved beneath his white t-shirt, stained with sweat and tears. His hands balled into fists at his sides. The corridor was empty, save for them, lined with mirrors on one side and framed photos of happier times on the other. Their history stared at them from the walls, smiling, laughing, a version of BTS that felt like a dream now. "I don't owe you anything," Jungkook growled. "Bullshit." Jimin stepped closer. "You owe me the truth. You owe all of us that much." Jungkook let out a humorless laugh, running a hand through his damp hair. "Truth?" His voice was bitter. "Which one do you want first? That I've been living a lie for 2 years? That I've been trying to convince myself that loving her is enough to forget everything else? Or that I was stupid enough to think maybe, just maybe, my brothers would be happy for me?" Jimin's eyes narrowed. "This isn't about us not being happy. This is about you lying to yourself. Silence fell like a guillotine. Then Jungkook snapped. Don't you dare act like you know what's in my heart, Jimin. You don't get to stand there and pretend you weren't part of the reason I'm even in this mess. The words hit Jimin like a slap. His breath caught, shoulders tightening. You think I don't blame myself? He whispered. You think I don't lie awake at night, wondering if I ruined everything? You did ruin everything, Jungkook shouted. When you walked away that night, when you said we could never talk about it again, you left me with no choice. Jimin's fists trembled at his sides. You think it was easy for me? Watching you fall apart and not being able to fix it? Watching you bury yourself in someone else just to erase? Don't say it. Jungkook's voice dropped, lower than it had ever gone. Cold. Final. Jimin paused, a muscle ticking in his jaw. You're marrying her because you're afraid, he said. Afraid that if you let yourself remember how we used to be, it'll destroy you. Jungkook didn't respond. He couldn't. His throat tightened until it felt like he was choking on air. I loved you, Jimin whispered. The hallway fell completely silent. Jungkook blinked. Jimin had never said it before. Not in words. Not like that. He continued, voice shaking. I loved you so much it scared the hell out of me. And when I realized it wasn't something I could turn off, I panicked. I thought if we stopped, if I kept my distance, maybe it would go away. But it didn't. It just got worse. And now you're about to throw your life away pretending it never happened. Jungkook's eyes welled up again. He pressed a fist to his mouth to hold back a sob. You don't get to do this to me now, he said finally, his voice broken. You don't get to say that now. But it's the truth, Jimin said. They stood there for a long moment, breathing heavily, staring at each other like enemies who used to be lovers. The fluorescent lights above buzzed, casting cold shadows across their faces. Then a sudden voice cut through the tension like a blade. You two really need to shut up. Both of them turned toward the voice, startled. Taehyung stood at the end of the hallway, arms crossed, expression unreadable. He walked toward them slowly, his boots echoing with each step, eyes locked on Jungkook. I told you, Taehyung said, voice quiet. You're not marrying her because you love her. I'm trying to fix my life, Jungkook muttered. No, Taehyung replied. You're trying to cover your wounds with gold and call it healing. But it's still bleeding. Jimin swallowed, but said nothing. Taehyung turned to him next. And you, he added, you don't get to play the victim anymore. You held a loaded gun to what you two had, pulled the trigger, and now you're crying over the corpse. Jimin flinched. Taehyung took a breath. You both hurt each other. That's what love does when it's not ready. It breaks things. It scars. But what you're doing now, pretending, lying, bleeding in silence, that's worse than any heartbreak. Jungkook looked down, lips trembling. What do I do then? He whispered. How do I undo everything? You can't undo it, Taehyung said. But you can choose what you do next. Jungkook turned his gaze to him, eyes raw and red. You want the truth? Taehyung said. She knows. The girl you're marrying, she knows you don't love her like you're supposed to. But she's hoping you'll grow into it, that someday you'll look at her the way you used to look at. Don't. But it was too late. The name hung in the air between them, unspoken but obvious. Jimin's voice was faint. You told her? No, Taehyung said. She saw it. She's not stupid. Jungkook covered his face with his hands, his shoulders shaking. She asked me once, Taehyung continued, softer now, why you never write songs about her. Why your lyrics are always about longing, about what's lost, about someone you can't have. I didn't know what to say. Jungkook let out a sound between a laugh and a sob. I didn't even realize I was still writing about him. You were never not writing about him, Taehyung said. For a moment, the three stood in silence. Not as bandmates, not as celebrities, but as broken boys with too many secrets and too few ways to express them. Jimin stepped closer, hesitant. I don't want to lose you again, he said. Not to her. Not to this performance. Jungkook looked up. Their eyes met. There was no more anger there, no more screaming. Just fear, longing, regret. I don't know how to come back, Jungkook said. Then let's figure it out, Jimin whispered. Together. Taehyung exhaled, a small smile tugging at his lips for the first time in hours. Finally, he muttered. Some king honesty. But before anything else could be said, a sudden buzz echoed from Jungkook's phone. He fished it from his pocket with trembling fingers, reading the message with growing horror. "What is it?" Jimin asked. Jungkook's face went pale. "She's here. At the studio." Taehyung's smile vanished. Jungkook looked up, eyes wild with panic. "She wants to talk," she said. She saw something. The three of them froze. Outside the window, the night had grown darker. The storm that had been quietly building finally broke, thunder rolling through the city like a warning. And somewhere in the shadows of that storm, the truth waited ugly, unstoppable, ready to burn everything down. "You lied to me, Jungkook." Her voice sliced through the studio air like a scalpel, clean, cold, and surgically precise. She stood by the doorway, framed by the pale corridor lights behind her, a shadow cast long across the rehearsal floor. Her name was Minji, the woman Jungkook had asked to marry him, and she was no longer smiling. Jungkook's breath caught. She wore the necklace he'd given her, the one he had picked out during a tour stop in Paris. At the time, he thought it would make the moment feel real. Now, it clung to her collarbone like a chain. Jimin shifted beside him, tense and ready, but unsure of where to step. Taehyung didn't move at all, his eyes locked on her like he was watching a fuse burn down. Jungkook took a step forward, but Minji raised her hand. "Don't," she said. "Don't come closer unless you're ready to stop lying." It stopped dead. No one spoke. The studio's silence had never felt heavier. The mirrors lining the wall reflected them all, Jungkook trembling, Jimin coiled like a spring, Taehyung calm but unreadable, and Minji eyes glossy but dry. She wasn't going to cry. Not in front of him. Not now. Minji walked forward slowly, each step deliberate. Her heels echoed across the empty floor. When she finally stood in front of Jungkook, her voice dropped to a whisper. "I saw the video, Jungkook." He blinked. "What video?" Her laugh was brittle. "The one your fan accidentally uploaded to her private story. The one where you and Jimin were in Osaka. 2:34 in the morning. You were holding his face like the world was ending." Jimin turned pale. Jungkook's mouth opened and closed, trying to find words. "Minji, that was years ago." "But it wasn't nothing," she said, her voice cracking now. "You told me it was a phase, a moment of confusion, that you had feelings, but they passed." "They did," he said quickly. Her hand rose. Smack. The sound of the slap rang louder than any of their songs had ever played. Jimin flinched. Taehyung took a step back. "You don't get to lie and then tell me it was for my sake," Minji spat. "I am not some girl you settle for because the person you actually love is off limits." Jungkook's face stung, but he didn't move. "Minji, I was trying to protect you. I didn't want you to get hurt." "But you proposed anyway," she hissed. "You let me plan a wedding around a fantasy. You stood in front of me and promised a future while staring at him." She turned to Jimin. "And you just stood there? You let him go through with it?" Jimin's lips parted, but no sound came. "You're both cowards," she whispered. "You love each other so much you'd rather destroy yourselves than admit it." "No," Jungkook said. "It's not that simple. It never is," she cut in. "Love never is. But lying? That's simple. And you chose it, both of you." Jungkook's throat tightened. "Minji, I never wanted to hurt you, but you did." Minji stepped back, shaking her head. "I canceled the venue," she said. "The invitations, the press leak, everything. I didn't tell anyone yet. I wanted to hear the truth from you before I walked away." Silence. She stared at Jungkook, her eyes suddenly soft. "Do you love him?" Jungkook felt the weight of the question like it was tied to an anchor around his chest. He turned to Jimin, who looked at him with wide, terrified eyes. "Yes," Jungkook said. A single word. No hesitation. Minji inhaled slowly. "Then be brave enough to live with it." She turned and walked out. The door closed behind her without a sound. The studio felt like it was caving in. Jungkook didn't move. His legs felt like stone. Jimin stared at the floor, face unreadable. Taehyung ran a hand through his hair and muttered, "Well, F-ka." No one laughed. Minute passed. Then Jungkook sank to his knees. His sobs came out in heaves deep, ugly, guttural. Jimin rushed to him, kneeling beside him, pulling him into his arms. Jungkook clutched him like a drowning man, I ruined everything. He choked. No, Jimin said. You told the truth. Taehyung sat down on the floor across from them, arms resting on his knees, gaze soft. You can rebuild from the truth. You can't rebuild from a lie. But I heard her, Jungkook whispered. And she chose to walk away with grace, Taehyung replied. You should respect that by not running back to your shadows. Jungkook looked up. What now? Jimin didn't answer, because the door opened again. Namjoon stood there. Behind him, Yoongi and Jin. All three had been called in by the studio manager after Minji stormed out, screaming that she wouldn't be used for PR. Namjoon's expression was unreadable. Someone want to tell me what the hell is going on? No one moved. Because, right now, he continued, stepping inside, we have a full-blown scandal, a broken engagement, and a video trending on Korean Twitter under the hashtag Jungkook was real all along. Jimin paled. Oh my God. Yoongi sighed and sat on the floor next to Taehyung. I told you not to kiss in public places. Jin, unusually quiet, leaned against the mirror and crossed his arms. We need to talk. Namjoon looked at Jungkook. You're not saying anything. What's there to say? Jungkook said, his voice a hollow echo. I destroyed everything. No, Namjoon said. You just let the truth out. Now we figure out how to survive it. Jimin stepped forward. Hyung, if this ruins everything, Namjoon held up a hand. I don't care about the company right now, he said. I care about the five of you, and I care about whether we're still a team when the dust settles. Jungkook stood slowly. You think we can survive this? Namjoon looked at all of them. I think we've survived worse. Then he pulled out his phone. We're going to the cabin. All of us. Now, the cabin? Jimin asked. Namjoon nodded. No press, no fans, no managers. Just us. We fix this, or we break for good. Yoongi stood. What if the world finds out everything? Namjoon met Jungkook's gaze. Then, at least we didn't lie. Silence settled again. Then Jungkook nodded. Okay, he said. Let's go. As they walked out into the night, none of them noticed the lone figure standing by the exit half-shadowed someone who had heard every word. The door closed, and BTS disappeared into the dark. For the first time, they weren't running from the truth. They were walking into it. The wheels of the black van crunched over the gravel road as the mountain swallowed the last of the city's glow. No music played. No one spoke. The only sound was the hum of tires beneath them and the wind slicing through the towering pine trees that lined the narrow path ahead. The cabin, secluded and silent, waited at the top like an unspoken judgment. Inside the van, tension pressed against the six of them like invisible walls. Jungkook sat by the window, eyes hollow, watching the dark woods roll by. Jimin sat beside him, his fingers curled into the hem of his hoodie, knuckles white. Across from them, Taehyung leaned back, eyes closed, earbuds in, though no music played. Namjoon had the seat near the driver, phone in hand, but he hadn't looked at it once in the past 30 minutes. Jin and Yoongi were silent, but not detached. They were watching, measuring, waiting for someone to break the quiet first. It had been 2 hours since they'd left the studio. The media storm was still building. Their manager had called 15 times. The wedding news was already buried under a flood of fan theories, think pieces, and video edits dissecting every moment Jungkook and Jimin had ever shared on camera. The truth hadn't even fully emerged yet, and already it was rewriting everything. By the time the van stopped in front of the cabin, the air inside felt unbreathable. They filed out one by one, each man stepping into the cool mountain air like he'd just escaped from a burning building. The cabin was large, old but modernized, built with heavy wood and steel. The kind of place meant to be silent even when filled with voices. It belonged to their label, a retreat house rarely used unless one of them was at a breaking point. Namjoon unlocked the front door without a word. They stepped into the living room, exposed beams, stone fireplace, and wide windows that overlooked a valley drowned in mist. It was stunning, isolated, cold. Namjoon turned to face them all. No press, no staff, no cameras, just us, he said. Whatever happens in this house stays here. We don't leave until we figure out what the hell we are now. No one objected. The silence held for another minute before Jin spoke up, voice low. Let's get this over with." They all knew what he meant. They gathered in the center of the living room, the 6 of them forming a loose circle. No leaders, no hierarchy, just brothers, broken ones. Namjoon looked at Jungkook. "Start." Jungkook took a breath, then another, but still, the words didn't come. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone," he said at last. "Not Minji. Not any of you." Jin raised an eyebrow. "But you did." "I know. Why her?" Yoongi asked, voice sharper than usual. Jungkook flinched. "Because she was safe. Because she didn't look at me like I was a sin." Jimin's eyes fell. Taehyung looked between them, his jaw tight. "So you'd rather live in a lie than deal with what you actually feel?" "I was afraid," Jungkook said, "of losing everything. Of losing him." "You already were losing him," Jin muttered. Jimin finally looked up. "I told him to let go." Namjoon's brows lifted slightly. "Why?" "Because I couldn't handle it," Jimin said, voice cracking. "I was terrified of what people would say, of what it would do to the group. I told him to forget what happened. I pushed him away. And then he tried to move on," Yoongi said. "With someone else?" "Yeah," Jungkook whispered. "And I hated myself for it." The silence returned, this time heavier. Every word was a thread unraveling the years they'd stitched so carefully. Jin spoke again, softer now. "Do you love him?" "Yes," Jungkook said without hesitation. Jimin swallowed. "Do you still love me?" "Yes." "And you?" Namjoon turned to Jimin. "Yes," Jimin whispered. The room felt like it had shifted, like gravity had changed. "And now?" Jin asked. "What do you want now?" Jungkook met Jimin's eyes. "I want to stop pretending." Taehyung stood abruptly and walked to the window, running a hand through his hair. "You're going to destroy your career." "I already destroyed my life," Jungkook replied. "Maybe it's time I stopped caring about what the world wants and started caring about what I want." "And what if what you want kills BTS?" Taehyung turned around, his voice rising. "What if all of this burns everything we built?" "We're already burning," Jungkook said quietly. Namjoon nodded slowly. "He's right. Whether we address it or not, the damage is already happening. We either rebuild from it or let it consume us." Yoongi lit a cigarette by the open balcony door, exhaling slowly. "Let them talk. Let the world scream. If we're honest with each other, the rest can go to hell." "You really believe that?" Jimin asked him. Yoongi turned to him, his gaze unwavering. "I'd rather face the truth with you 6 than live a lie with 7 strangers." Taehyung walked over to Jungkook, eyes narrowed. "You're really going to fight for this?" "Yes." "Even if it means losing fans? Losing sponsors?" "Yes." "And me?" Taehyung said, voice quiet. Jungkook hesitated. "I hope not." Taehyung stared at him for a long time, then finally looked away. "I'm not mad that you love him," he said. "I'm mad you lied to all of us." "I know," Jungkook said. "I'm sorry." The apology hung in the air. "I'm not ready to say it's okay," Taehyung muttered, walking away. "But I'm not walking out either." Jin crossed his arms. "What happens when the label finds out?" Namjoon answered. "They already know." The room turned to him. "What?" "I told them earlier," he said. "They're panicking, but they're not pulling the plug yet. They want to see how it plays out. So we control the story," Yoongi said. "We tell it ourselves," Jimin said. Jungkook looked at him. "Together?" Jimin nodded. "Together." Taehyung leaned against the wall, exhaling. "Then we better tell the whole damn truth." Jin smiled faintly. "All of it." Namjoon looked around the room. "Then tomorrow, we film the video. No script, no spin, just us." Yoongi chuckled. "Finally, some real BTS content." The tension broke, not all the way, but enough to let breath in, enough to feel human again. That night, they sat around the fireplace, sipping soju, wrapped in blankets, laughter bubbling up between the cracks of grief. Jungkook sang softly under his breath. Jimin watched him like he was watching the sunrise after years of darkness. And in that cabin, miles from the noise, they remembered who they were beneath the fame. Not idols, not brand names, not headlines. Just 6 boys, still fighting for something real. Rain fell hard against the windows, turning the world outside the cabin into a smear of gray and shadows. Inside, the fire from the night before had burned out, and in its place was a chill that clung to the walls, colder than the mountain air ever could be. Morning arrived, not with warmth, but with war. They were up early. Too early. No one had slept well. Jungkook was pacing, back and forth in the living room, barefoot on the wooden floor, wearing a black hoodie and the same sweatpants he'd been in for 2 days. His hair was a mess, but his eyes were clear. Too clear. Jimin sat curled in the armchair across from him, wrapped in a blanket, sipping tea he hadn't touched. Namjoon was by the window, phone in hand, waiting for the signal from the media team that everything was set. Yoongi sat at the dining table with his laptop open, editing lyrics that no one else could see. Jin leaned against the kitchen counter, drinking coffee like it was the only thing tethering him to reality. And Taehyung, stood in the doorway of the back room, arms crossed, watching them all like a soldier about to choose a side. "I'm not sure we should do this," Jimin said, finally breaking the silence. Jungkook stopped mid-step. "What?" "This," Jimin repeated. "The video. It's too soon. The internet's already drowning in theories, fan wars, boycott threats. That's exactly why we do it now," Namjoon interrupted, turning from the window. "We don't let them write our story before we do." "But we're not ready," Jimin said, looking up. "We're still raw, still ffjungkooked up. We've always been frecked up," Yoongi said without looking up. "That's not new." "Yoongi," Jimin warned. "No, he's right," Jungkook said, stepping closer. "We're never going to be perfectly polished. We never were. We built this group on truth, on vulnerability, and somewhere along the way we started hiding behind PR-approved answers and safe narratives. Because we had to," Jin snapped. "We weren't just protecting ourselves, we were protecting millions of fans who saw us as something bigger than their reality." "And what good did that do?" Jungkook shot back. "I almost married someone I didn't love. I buried a part of myself so deep I stopped recognizing my own music. That's what pretending got us." "You still could have told us," Jin said, his voice sharp and shaking. "We would have listened." "No, you would have panicked," Jungkook replied, eyes flashing. "Just like you are now." Jin's jaw tensed, but he didn't answer. Jimin stood up now, stepping between them. "Enough. This isn't about blame." Namjoon held up his phone. "We go live in 1 hour. All 6 of us. No stylists, no script. We sit down, we talk, we tell the world what happened." "And what did happen exactly?" Taehyung asked suddenly, stepping forward. "Do we even know what we're admitting to? That you two had a secret relationship? That Jungkook proposed to someone else just to run away from it? That half of us knew and the other half didn't?" Silence. "Yes," Jungkook said. "All of that," Taehyung scoffed. "And you think the world will forgive you for it? You think ARMY will?" "I don't care if they forgive me," Jungkook said. "I care if they understand me. And what if they don't? Then at least I stop lying." Yoongi shut his laptop. "That's it then." He stood up and stretched. "We go in, we rip off the bandage, and we deal with the fallout together, or not at all." Namjoon looked around the room. "Everyone on board?" No one answered. He nodded anyway. "Good." The rest of the hour passed in a blur of silence, tension, and preparing the room where they'd film. No lights, just the natural gray wash of the rainy morning filtering through the windows. The camera was a single DSLR mounted on a tripod. The angle was wide enough to show all 6 of them sitting side by side on the worn leather couch. At 11:00 a.m. sharp, Namjoon pressed record. They sat in a line: Jin, Namjoon, Yoongi, Taehyung, Jungkook, and Jimin. No makeup, no stylists, just truth. Namjoon. "Hello, this is BTS," he said. "We are speaking to you today without scripts, without edits, and without the masks we've worn for too long." His voice was calm, but his hands were shaking slightly in his lap. "There have been a lot of rumors recently about Jungkook's wedding, about Jimin, about US. We want to address them, not through lawyers or press releases, but through our voices." Jin spoke next. "This isn't easy. We've debated for hours about whether to say anything at all. But hiding isn't who we are. Not anymore." Yoongi leaned in. "The truth is complicated, but we're not going to simplify it just to make it palatable." And then Jungkook spoke. "I was engaged," he said, "to someone I cared about deeply. She's a good person, kind, strong, and she didn't deserve to be part of a lie." His voice cracked, but he kept going. "I asked her to marry me because I wanted to move on. From feelings I never dealt with, from guilt I carried for years. He looked sideways at Jimin. I loved someone else, he said. The silence in the room was deafening. I still do. Jimin swallowed hard, his eyes red but dry. We were in a relationship, he said, years ago. It wasn't supposed to happen. It wasn't allowed to happen. But it did. And we didn't know what to do with it. Taehyung spoke now, his voice more restrained. We found out at different times. We had different reactions. But we're here now, together, still. Jin sighed. We've been through a lot, and this isn't the first time we've disagreed, hurt each other, or made mistakes. But what matters is that we're not walking away. Namjoon looked directly into the camera. We are not breaking up. We are not hiding anymore. And we ask you, our fans, our family, to trust that this too is part of our story. The video ended 10 minutes later, after a few final words, and no promises except one: honesty from now on. By noon, it had exploded online. Army across the world split in half. Some cried with joy, saying they'd known all along that love was love, and BTS was always about truth. Others felt betrayed, angry, accusing them of deception, selfishness, betrayal of culture and expectations. But one thing was certain: everyone was talking about it. That night, back in the cabin, the six of them sat around the fire again. No cameras, no audience. Just them. You okay? Jimin asked Jungkook quietly. I don't know, Jungkook said. But I feel real again. Jimin reached for his hand. Taehyung watched them from across the room, then nodded slowly, almost to himself. We'll survive this, he said. And no one argued. Because somewhere beneath the chaos, beneath the headlines and hashtags, they remembered why they started all of this in the first place. Not for fame, not for perfection, but for each other. They didn't expect mercy. But they also didn't expect the bloodbath. It started with a trending tag in Seoul that read, BTS, lead twos. Then came the overseas media, weaponizing every frame of the video like they were dissecting a political scandal. Screenshots of Jungkook holding back tears, Jimin's trembling hands, Taehyung's stiff silence, Jin looking away in that one moment where his jaw clenched too tightly. They made it all into symbolism, metaphors, betrayal narratives, love stories. But worse than the media was the betrayal from within the fandom. Their oldest fans, some who had camped outside stadiums for days, who had memorized every lyric from the Wings era, turned bitter. They posted long threads about trust, about role models, about how this wasn't what they signed up for. One post read, I gave them 10 years of my life, and they spat in my face with this circus. I'm done. Another, don't tell me love is love, when this whole thing was a lie wrapped in PR manipulation. Some deleted their fan accounts entirely. Others filmed themselves burning albums. Concert DVDs shattered, posters ripped, photo books tossed into trash bins. The internet was on fire. Inside the cabin, the heat felt even worse. Jin was the first to snap. Not publicly, not on social media, but within the four walls of the kitchen the morning after the video aired. He slammed his mug onto the countertop, coffee splashing over the rim. We should have waited. Namjoon, standing across from him with dark circles under his eyes, didn't even blink. Waited for what? For this to blow over, for the emotions to settle, for an actual F-King plan. Jin's voice was sharp enough to cut steel. There was no plan because we were done hiding, Namjoon said. And now look at where that honesty got us, Jin snapped. A third of our base is gone. Brands are pulling out. The label's panicking. Yoongi walked in just then, bleary-eyed and silent, holding his phone. They dropped the perfume deal, he said quietly. All of it, no warning. Jimin, who had just stepped into the hallway and overheard it, stopped in his tracks. His face drained of color. It's my fault, he whispered. Jungkook behind him heard it too.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is, Jimin said, eyes glistening. If we hadn't, don't you dare do that, Jungkook said, stepping forward. Don't carry this alone. You think the world cares who carries what? Taehyung's voice came from the corner. He was leaning against the fridge, arms crossed, hair disheveled, eyes tired. They see what they want to see. And right now, they see you two as the reason everything is falling apart. Jimin turned to him. Then say it. If that's how you feel, say it. Taehyung stared back at him, then said it. I don't blame you. A pin could have dropped. I blame you, Taehyung repeated, softer now, but no less cutting, for lying to us, for lying to yourselves. for dragging this secret out until it exploded. We were a team. We were supposed to protect each other. Jungkook's voice was low. We were protecting you. No, Taehyung said. You were protecting yourselves. Namjoon stepped between them. Stop it! All of you! No, Taehyung said, stepping forward now. We've been holding this in. We keep saying together, together, but it wasn't. It never was. You two were in your own world, wrapped in drama, making choices that we had to answer for. You think it was easy for us? Jimin burst out. Do you know what it's like to wake up every day and pretend you don't feel something that's burning in your chest? Do you know what it's like to see the person you love sing about someone else? Jin's voice was quiet but firm. We all have pain, Jimin, but we didn't let it derail the group. And I did? Jimin's voice cracked. Yoongi looked at him, then Jungkook. You didn't mean to, but yeah, you did. The silence was a punch to the ribs. Jungkook stared at them. Then maybe I should leave. No, Namjoon said instantly. That's not the answer. Why not? Jungkook snapped. Wouldn't that fix everything? Let me be the villain. Let me be the one who ruined BTS. Because leaving isn't fixing, Namjoon said. It's surrendering. But we're already losing everything, Jungkook shouted. Then we fight for it, Namjoon said. No one said anything for a long time. Then Jin finally sat down at the kitchen table, rubbing his temples. I hate this, he muttered. I hate watching us fall apart. We're not falling apart, Namjoon said. Taehyung scoffed. Feels like it. Feels like we finally see each other, Yoongi said. That's not destruction. That's clarity. Jimin leaned against the wall, wiping his face. So what do we do? Namjoon looked around. We stop reacting. And we start responding. Everyone stared at him. Today, we go back online. Live. No edits. Again, he said. We read the comments. We answer the hate. We face the fire. No filter, Yin asked. No filter, Namjoon said. Yoongi sighed. Well, guess I'll wear black. And so they did it. They set up the same camera, same couch, same 6 boys. Only this time, it was live. No cuts, no hiding. The comments started flooding in the second they appeared on screen. Thousands, tens of thousands. Some screamed in support. Others cursed them to hell. Some begged them to go back to the way things were. Others celebrated the downfall. Namjoon read them out loud. Then he passed the phone to Jimin. He read them too. Then Jungkook. And when one particularly brutal comment came in, one that called Jungkook a disgrace to his family, to Korea, and to BTS, Jungkook took a deep breath and said, I understand your anger. I wish I could sit down with you, just you, and explain how hard it is to be honest in a world that punishes truth. But I won't apologize for loving who I love. The silence was deep. Even deeper was the shift that followed. Some comments changed. Some softened. They stayed live for 3 hours. They talked. They cried. They answered. They didn't flinch. By the end, the screen was flooded with hearts. Not all was forgiven, but something had changed. After it ended, they didn't speak for a while. Then Yoongi of all people whispered, That was brave. Taehyung stood and walked outside, needing air. Jin followed. Namjoon looked at Jungkook and Jimin. You still love him? Yes, Jungkook said. You still love him? He asked Jimin. Yes. Then love him, Namjoon said. But don't ever let it make us enemies again. Jungkook reached for Jimin's hand. And for once, Jimin didn't pull away. Outside, the storm began to fade. The cabin sat quiet again. But inside, for the first time in weeks, there was peace. Because truth messy, painful, complicated truth had finally been spoken. And now, they could begin again. A single message changed everything. Again, it arrived late, long after the fire had dimmed in the cabin, after they had taken off their masks for the second time, after the internet's rage began to cool into something quieter, more dangerous, scrutiny. It was past midnight. Jungkook and Jimin were sitting together in the corner of the living room, their legs tangled, heads leaning against each other's shoulders in a silence that spoke louder than words. Namjoon had gone to bed early, drained from the marathon of managing not just the band, but their emotional survival. Jin was still awake in the kitchen, scrolling through news updates while pretending not to watch them. Yoongi was in the back room, headphones on, writing lyrics he hadn't shown anyone. Taehyung had taken to pacing again, back and forth on the wooden porch under the moonlight, like a soldier waiting for the next battle. And then the message came in. Namjoon's phone buzzed, lighting up his nightstand. From CEO Bang. Urgent. Board is convening at 9 a.m. The company is not just bleeding contracts. Legal is asking questions. Some investors are threatening to sue. We need to talk. All of you. He stared at the screen for several minutes before sitting up and rubbing his face with both hands. They had gone live to tell the truth, but they hadn't thought about what would come after the truth. The system wasn't built to forgive. By 1. 0 aim. Everyone was awake. Gathered around the coffee table again, eyes hollow, voices low. It's not just about fans anymore, Namjoon said, phone in hand. It's about legality, contracts, clauses. They're saying we misled investors by hiding a personal relationship that could impact public image and therefore profit. That's insane, Jimin said, voice hoarse. We're not stock prices, but we are, Jin muttered. To them, we always were. Taehyung stood by the window, arms crossed. What do they want? For us to fake a breakup now? Pretend we were just experimenting with identity? Issue a public apology to restore market confidence? No one's saying that yet, Namjoon said, but they're panicking. And what do we want? Jungkook asked. Silence. Yoongi looked up from where he was sitting on the floor. We want to stay together, right? His voice was calm, but it held weight. Jimin glanced at Jungkook, then nodded. Yes. And the band? Jin asked flatly. The question hit like a punch to the chest. The room went still. Taehyung turned away, rubbing his temple. That's the real question, isn't it? Namjoon didn't answer right away. Then, I think it's time we ask ourselves what we're willing to lose. They didn't sleep that night. Instead, they debated. Whisper shouted. Paced. Drank too much tea. Taehyung exploded at one point, yelling at Jungkook that he'd hijacked the group's future for his personal redemption arc. Jimin shouted back that it wasn't about redemption, it was about love. Jin punched a wall after another call came in from a sponsor dropping them over value misalignment. Yoongi cried silently in the bathroom, staring at his own reflection like it had betrayed him. By the time the sun began to rise, they were no closer to peace, but they were ready for war. The meeting at the company was set for 9:00 a.m. sharp. They arrived together. No managers, no stylists, no entourage, just BTS. The boardroom was colder than the cabin. Executives in suits sat around a polished glass table, some familiar, some new. Legal advisors flanked the sides. There were reports, charts, financial projections, and at the head of the table sat CEO Bang himself, his expression unreadable. He didn't welcome them. He didn't smile. He simply said, "You've placed the company in a difficult position." Yoongi leaned forward. "We told the truth." Bang nodded slowly. "The truth, when timed poorly, can cost millions." "Then let it cost," Jungkook said. A murmur went around the table. "Do you understand what's at stake here?" one of the lawyers asked, adjusting his glasses. "There are morality clauses in some of your contracts. Advertisers can claim breach. Foreign investors have cited cultural dissonance. We are not talking about a PR scandal. We're talking about corporate betrayal. We were never property," Jimin said. "You were product," another executive replied. "And you chose to change the packaging without consulting the manufacturer." Namjoon slammed a hand on the table. "We are not here to be spoken to like that." Jin placed a hand on Namjoon's arm. "Let them finish. We need to hear it." So they did. They heard about losses, about petitions, about closed doors, about the risk of their entire brand being dropped from global platforms. They heard veiled threats disguised as legal advice and suggestions to neutralize the narrative. By issuing a statement that Jungkook and Jimin had experimented emotionally but confirmed no ongoing involvement, Jungkook stood. "I'd rather die than write that statement." Bang leaned back in his chair. "So what's your solution?" Yoongi stood too. "You don't get to have a solution. This isn't a branding crisis. This is a human king reality. We're not putting ourselves back in a box just because your investors got uncomfortable." Jimin looked around the table. "Are we the first people in the history of K-pop to love someone we weren't supposed to?" No one answered. "Then don't pretend this is new. Just admit, it's inconvenient." Bang folded his hands. "You are gambling with your legacy. Taehyung spoke now, voice quiet but razor sharp. Maybe the legacy needs to burn before something real can grow from the ashes. There it was. The line they'd crossed. The room descended into a storm of voices, executives talking over each other, legal threats tossed like knives, lawyers whispering into phones. Some of the boys were told to wait outside, that they'd be contacted once tempers cooled. But they refused to leave. They sat there for hours. And finally, Bang spoke again. "You've made your position clear," he said. "We won't force a statement." Jungkook breathed out slowly. "But don't expect the company to protect you from the consequences," Bang finished. Then he stood, and the meeting was over. Back in the van, the boys were silent. The skyline passed in a blur. Seoul looked different now, colder, sharper, less like home. At a red light, Jimin whispered, "Did we just end our careers?" Jungkook reached over and took his hand. "No, we just reclaimed them." That night, the headlines shifted again. BTS refuses to apologize. K-pop's biggest band faces corporate rebellion. Jungkook and Jimin hold hands in protest meeting. Army was still divided. The world still questioned. But for the first time in years, BTS wasn't asking for approval. They were asking to be understood. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to survive. Or to start again. The storm didn't end. It evolved. What began as scandal had now become something else deeper, wider, more tangled in cultural fault lines and global expectations. By the time they returned to the cabin 2 days after the boardroom confrontation, BTS had become the centerpiece of a war they didn't ask for. News anchors debated whether idols were ever entitled to privacy. Government officials subtly criticized their influence on the nation's image. Netizens flooded forums with essays on morality, masculinity, queerness, tradition, betrayal. Their faces were plastered across newsstands, Jungkook's tear-stained cheeks, Jimin's trembling voice, Taehyung's cold stare. Army had split into factions. The loyal, the furious, the confused, and the ones who used to scream their names but now refused to acknowledge their existence. It wasn't a scandal anymore. It was a revolution. And revolutions are bloody. They sat in silence for the first hour back in the cabin. The fireplace crackled, but gave no comfort. Jungkook was staring at the floor. Jimin sat beside him, but not touching. Taehyung stood near the bookshelf, arms crossed, saying nothing. Jin and Namjoon were at the kitchen counter, whispering too low to be heard. Yoongi was curled up on the couch, eyes shut, earbuds in, but not listening to music. There was no comfort in sound, only dread. Then the silence broke. "I think I need to leave," Taehyung said. Everyone turned to him at once. "Leave what?" Namjoon asked, already fearing the answer. "The group," Taehyung replied. Jimin stood immediately. "What the hell are you talking about?" Taehyung didn't flinch. "I've thought about it. A lot. Since this all started, I've been trying to be okay with it, but I'm not. I'm tired of being angry. Tired of pretending I don't feel betrayed every time I look at you." Jungkook stood now too, heart pounding. "Tae, please don't do this." Taehyung's yaw tightened. "I'm not doing this to punish you. I'm doing this because I don't know who I am in this group anymore. I used to feel like I belonged. Now I feel like I'm standing on the outside of someone else's story." "You're not," Jimin said, stepping forward. "Yes, I am." Taehyung snapped. "You two made decisions that affected all of us. And instead of bringing us into the truth, you left us to clean up after it. You say it's about love, but love doesn't burn down everything else to survive." Jungkook stepped forward now. "Then help us rebuild it. Don't walk away." "Rebuild what?" Taehyung's voice cracked. "The public doesn't trust us. The company doesn't support us. Our fans are at war, and He looked down, chest rising and falling. "I don't know if I love this anymore," he finished. Jin finally spoke, voice low. "You're hurt. We all are. But leaving doesn't heal anything." "No, but staying might break me more," Taehyung said. Yoongi sat up now, taking his earbuds out. "So what then? We let this whole thing fall apart?" "No," Taehyung said. "But maybe it has to change." Namjoon walked over slowly, measured. "Are you saying you want a break? Or are you saying you're done for good?" Taehyung looked up. His eyes were bloodshot. "I'm saying I need space. I need time to figure out who I am outside of this. Silence stretched, tense and raw. Jimin looked stricken. Do you hate us? Taehyung shook his head. No, I'm just tired of sacrificing myself for everyone else's truth. He turned and walked toward the stairs. Jungkook whispered, Don't go. Taehyung paused, but didn't turn around. I already stayed too long in silence, he said. Now, I need to find my voice again. Even if it's not with all of you. He disappeared upstairs. The door closed. No one spoke for a long time. Jin sat down heavily. I never thought he'd be the one. Yoongi stood and poured himself a drink. Hands trembling, Jungkook sat back down and covered his face with both hands. I ruined everything, he whispered. No, Namjoon said. You exposed what was already broken. Jimin sat beside him. We can't lose him. We might have to, Namjoon replied. At least for now. That night, sleep didn't come. Jungkook tossed in bed, haunted by images of Taehyung's back as he walked away. Jimin sat on the floor by the window, staring at the moon, feeling the weight of a world that now blamed him for everything. Yoongi wrote lyrics in the dark, each word sounding like a goodbye. Jin called his parents just to hear a familiar voice. Namjoon stood outside in the cold barefoot, letting the sting in his skin remind him he was still here. Morning came. Taehyung was gone. He left a note. I love you all, but I don't love myself right now. I need to find that again. Please don't follow. I'll come back if I can. The note was stained, not with ink, with tears. They read it in silence. Jungkook broke first. Aesoped. And this time, Jimin didn't hold him. He collapsed next to him, crying too hard to even speak. Namjoon stood there, holding the note, hands shaking. Yoongi looked out the window and whispered, We crossed a line, and we can't go back. Jin just closed his eyes. The group that had survived everything, loss, fame, betrayal, war, burnout, had finally reached something it didn't know how to fix. Not because they stopped loving each other, but because they stopped knowing how. Outside, the wind howled through the trees like a requiem. Inside, the silence was grief. And BTS, what was left of it, sat with the terrifying possibility that the truth may have saved them. But not all of them. Not yet. The cabin felt haunted. Not by ghosts, not by spirits, but by memories that clung to the air like smoke. Every room bore the silence Taehyung had left behind, his half-empty mug on the dining table, his coat still hanging by the door, the echo of his laughter buried in the wooden beams of the hallway. No one moved for a long time. Jungkook sat at the kitchen table, the note from Taehyung lying in front of him, like a confession. His eyes were red, his hands clenched into fists, his chest rising and falling as if trying to keep himself from shattering again. Jimin stood at the counter, arms crossed tightly, his jaw clenched as he stared out the window, unmoving. Yoongi was on the couch, laptop on his lap, screen open but untouched. Namjoon paced back and forth, the lines of his face deeper, darker, heavier than the day before. Jin leaned against the doorframe, watching them all with an expression that couldn't decide whether to be furious or numb. No one said his name. No one said Taehyung, as if speaking it aloud would make the loss real. Then, without warning, Jungkook stood. His chair scraped back violently, and he walked to the fireplace. He grabbed the note and tossed it in. The flames caught instantly. What the hell are you doing? Jimin snapped. Jungkook turned, eyes wild. I don't want to look at it anymore. That's not yours to decide. He left us. He left you. Jungkook flinched, but didn't look away. Jimin stepped closer, voice rising. He didn't walk away from us, Jungkook. He walked away from you. Because you let everything become about your pain, your love, your guilt. We were just background noise in your tragedy. That's not fair, Jungkook whispered. It's not supposed to be fair, Jimin snapped. It's the truth. Namjoon moved to intervene, but Yoongi held up a hand. No, let them finish. They've been dancing around this for weeks. Jin didn't move. He just listened. Eyes like stone. Jungkook stared at Jimin, breathing hard. Do you really think this is all my fault? I think you don't see beyond yourself anymore, Jimin said. You say you were protecting me, but what you did, hiding us, proposing to Minji, dragging this lie to the edge of a cliff, you weren't protecting me. You were protecting you, your image, your safety. You loved me, but not enough to stand beside me in the light. I asked you to stand with me, Jungkook shot back. And you told me to bury it? Because I was scared. So was I. Their voices collided in the air like a car crash. You broke me, Jimin, Jungkook shouted. You told me to let you go, and then hated me for doing it. Jimin stepped forward, fists clenched. Because I didn't think you'd actually do it. The silence that followed was thunderous. Jungkook looked at him, really looked and saw, for the first time, not just anger, but anguish. All the nights they hadn't talked. All the hugs that lingered too long. All the unfinished sentences. I loved you so much it scared me, Jimin said, softer now. But I needed you to fight for me, for us. And when you didn't, his voice broke. I hated you for it. Jungkook stepped back like he'd been struck. I'm sorry, he whispered. I know, Jimin said. But he didn't move. Namjoon finally stepped forward, arms crossed. You two need to decide something. Now. Not for PR, not for fans, for us. Are you in this together, or are you dragging the rest of us through your storm for nothing? Jungkook looked at Jimin. Jimin looked at Jungkook. I don't know, Jimin said. It was honest, and it hurt more than a lie. Yoongi stood. Then maybe you both need to take a break. Like Tae. No, Jungkook said instantly. We can't fall apart now. You already are. Jin finally spoke. Taehyung's gone. That's not a maybe. That's not a threat. It's reality. And now we're standing on the edge of a cliff with no map. So stop pretending we're a family if you're not willing to act like one. You think I don't care? Jungkook asked. I think you care too much about being right, Jin said. I think you care about being safe, Jimin added. And I think, Namjoon said, we're done with this for today. No one argued. That night, Jungkook didn't sleep in his room. He curled up on the couch, arms wrapped around himself like armor, headphones in, replaying old voice notes Taehyung had left on his phone. He didn't cry. He was past crying, past breaking. All that was left was hollow space. Jimin sat outside on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, cigarette between his fingers. He hadn't smoked in years. But tonight wasn't a night for rules. He stared at the stars, wondering if they still meant anything. Yoongi wrote until sunrise. A song, or a letter, or both. Jin called their manager and asked, what happens if we cancel the rest of the year? He didn't wait for an answer. Namjoon spent hours drafting an email to the label, then deleting it. When the morning came, no one spoke. Breakfast was silent. Jimin looked at Jungkook across the table. He still didn't know the answer. Not yet. They had told the world the truth. Now they had to ask if they could live with it. And truth, unlike lies, doesn't forgive easily, especially not between brothers. When the knock came, it wasn't loud. It was soft, almost hesitant, as if the person behind the door wasn't entirely sure they belonged on the other side of it. It was late afternoon, rain was falling again, slow and steady, casting the mountain trees in a wash of gray. The cabin, still bruised from the last 3 days, was quiet. No one had spoken since breakfast. The TV remained off. The guitar stayed untouched. Every conversation was half started and half swallowed. Jungkook was the one who opened the door. His hair was messy, his hoodie oversized and pulled tight around him, eyes bruised from lack of sleep. On the porch stood Taehyung, wearing a black coat, rain dripping from his bangs, his hands stuffed into his pockets. He looked thinner, or maybe just older. For a moment, neither of them said anything. The air between them vibrated with too many emotions. Jungkook swallowed. You came back. Taehyung didn't move. Only for a few minutes. Jungkook's shoulders dropped. You should come in. I'm not staying, but I need to say something. Inside, Jimin had heard the voice. He stepped into the hallway, barefoot, lips parting, when he saw Taehyung on the porch. Yoongi emerged behind him, Jin too peering around the corner. Namjoon stayed in the kitchen, but his head turned. The cabin held its breath. Taehyung's gaze moved from Jungkook to Jimin, then back again. I wasn't mad because you loved each other, he said. I was mad because you didn't trust us to love you through it. Jungkook's lips trembled. Tae, you let shame shape your decisions. You didn't just hide it from the fans. You hid it from us. From me. We didn't want to lose you, Jimin whispered. Taehyung's voice cracked. You lost me anyway. The words hit like a slap. Jungkook stepped forward. I never stopped trying to find you. Taehyung looked at him. You were trying to fix me, not understand me. The rain fell harder. Jungkook blinked. I was scared.
So was I.
Taehyung said suddenly, raising his voice for the first time. I was scared that everything we built, the seven of us, was just a facade. That the minute it stopped being picture perfect, it would all come crumbling down. And it did. Jimin finally stepped forward. It doesn't have to stay broken. Taehyung turned to him. You and I were never broken, Jimin. We were just left out of each other's truth. Yoongi stepped forward then. You think any of us didn't break? I was writing songs I never showed anyone. Jin was calling managers behind closed doors. Namjoon hasn't looked anyone in the eyes since that boardroom. We were all unraveling and none of us knew how to ask for help. Taehyung's eyes shone. I needed you to say it, Jungkook said softly. That you were hurt, that you felt betrayed. I needed to know I mattered. Taehyung said, his voice barely above a whisper. Jin finally walked forward, placing a hand on Taehyung's shoulder. You matter, he said. Not as a member, not as a voice. As you, Kim Taehyung. Taehyung looked at the hand, then slowly looked around the room. Yoongi, Namjoon, Jin, Jimin, Jungkook. His brothers, he exhaled. I thought if I ran far enough, it would feel quieter, but it just felt lonelier. Then come back, Jimin said. Taehyung's jaw clenched. On one condition. Anything, Jungkook said. No more secrets. No more walking on eggshells. If we're going to keep doing this group, this life, we do it with everything on the table. Even the ugly parts. Namjoon spoke for the first time. Agreed. Taehyung nodded slowly. Then, he stepped inside. Jungkook moved to hug him, but Taehyung held up a hand. Not yet, he said. Give me time. Jungkook nodded, stepping back. The cabin, for the first time in days, began to feel like a home again. Later that night, they sat in a circle, blankets wrapped around them, tea steaming in mugs. It was Jin who broke the silence first. I had a call with the label again today. More fallout? Yoongi asked. Some, Jin said. But mostly, they're listening now. Because of the video? Jungkook asked. No, Jin said. Because we didn't fold. Namjoon added.
Army's starting to shift. Not all of them, but the ones who stayed, they're louder now. Braver.
They're watching us, Jimin said. Waiting to see if we survive. We won't, Yoongi said. Everyone looked at him. Not if we keep pretending we're okay. We're not pretending anymore, Jungkook said. Yoongi looked at him. Aren't we? Look around. We're sitting here like a family that's healing. But we're still bleeding. Just quieter now. Taehyung stirred his tea. So let's talk. They did. For hours. About everything. Jin's fear of being the dad who had to hold it all together while secretly unraveling. Yoongi's resentment at being seen as the emotionally detached one when he felt everything. Namjoon's guilt over leading them into a storm he couldn't control. Jungkook's inner war between love and obligation. Jimin's identity crisis after being labeled both victim and traitor by fans. Taehyung's loneliness. The way silence had become louder than any scream. No one cried. Not this time. They just spoke and listened and let the truth sit in the room finally without flinching. When dawn came, the rain had stopped. Outside, the world remained uncertain. The press was still hungry, the industry still watching, the fans still torn. But inside the cabin, something had shifted. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But possibility. Jungkook stood and stretched. He looked at Jimin, at Taehyung, at all of them, then smiled, just slightly. We're not healed, he said. No, Jimin replied. But we're not hiding either. Yoongi raised his cup. To being broken, together. They clinked mugs. The sun broke through the clouds for the first time in days. And maybe, just maybe, their darkest chapter wasn't the end. But the beginning of something real. The cabin was different now. Not healed, not whole, but changed. It creaked with the weight of every unspoken truth finally aired, like old wood stretching after a long, cold winter. The silence wasn't oppressive anymore. It had turned into something else. A quiet that held space for what came next. No more running, no more pretending. Just reality. And reality, they were beginning to understand, wasn't merciful. It was 6:14 a.m. when the first call came through. Namjoon was the one who answered. Speak. His voice was raw from fatigue, low, leader-worn. He hadn't slept much. No one had. The voice on the other end belonged to director Kang, a powerful executive producer for one of the most influential national networks. We want you on the special, he said without preamble. 1 hour, no edits, prime time, just the 6 of you. Namjoon didn't answer immediately. You understand what that means, right? The director continued. This isn't an interview. It's an exposure. You'll be grilled, challenged, everything on the table. But it's your only shot at reframing the narrative. And if we say no, then the world keeps deciding who you are for you. Namjoon looked out the window, rain dripping down the glass like fingers sliding across forgotten regrets. We'll talk about it. You have until noon. The call ended. By 6:30, the rest were gathered around the fireplace, faces still puffy with sleep and ache. Coffee brewed in the kitchen. The fire crackled. They sat in a semicircle like they had so many times before. But today the stakes had names. Today, the silence meant something. They want us on national TV, Namjoon said. Live? Jin asked, his voice still rasped. Live. Yoongi exhaled a breath that sounded like surrender. Of course they do. Jungkook leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. And if we say no, they'll replace us with rumors. That we're ashamed. That we're hiding. We're not hiding anymore, Taehyung said, not looking at anyone. But are we ready? Jimin asked. To be asked what we really are? To be dissected, attacked, judged? Again? Jin ran a hand through his hair. We were never going to escape the battlefield. We might as well choose the weapons. We won't be able to prepare for this, Namjoon said. No media coaching, no pre-screened questions. It's live or nothing. They want blood, Yoongi muttered. Then let's bleed, Jungkook said quietly. Everyone turned to him. He looked calm. But something in his eyes said no more fear. They want pain, right? He continued. Let them have it. Let them see what it costs to be us. Let them see everything. Jimin shifted, uncomfortable. You really want the world to see us like that? They already do, Jungkook said. But they don't understand it. That's the difference. That's the only thing we still have control over. Taehyung stood and walked to the window. We're not just coming out as a couple. We're coming out as humans. As flawed, angry, broken men who built something beautiful and then almost burned it to the ground. Yoongi lit a cigarette.
So we tell them about the fights?
About the secrets, Jin added. About the fear, Jimin whispered. About the love, Jungkook finished. They all looked to Namjoon. He stood slowly, looked around at each of them. Eyes fierce. Then we go. They nodded. Together. At noon, their decision went public. BTS to appear on live national broadcast. No scripts. No apologies. By 6:00 p.m., the internet was an inferno. Some fans celebrated, seeing it as a sign of courage. Others sharpened knives. The network released teaser promos, shots of the boys arriving at the studio. The hosts, two of the country's most notoriously hard-hitting personalities, talking with eager anticipation. Headlines screamed across international media. BTS to speak on the scandal that shook the industry. Jungkook and Jimin break their silence again. Is this the end or the rebirth of K-pop's most powerful group? Inside the dressing room, the tension was suffocating. No stylists, no scripts, no safety net. Just the 6 of them, waiting. Jungkook sat in front of the mirror, staring at his own reflection like it was a stranger. Jimin paced behind him, biting his thumbnail, his nerves visible in every sharp inhale. Taehyung leaned against the wall, eyes closed, listening to the distant sound of the audience settling in. Jin sat with his hands clasped, head bowed. Yoongi smoked out the window until the producer barked at him. Namjoon stood near the door, unreadable. Then the assistant knocked. You're on in 5. The hallway felt like the longest stretch of their lives. The stage was a sterile, dramatic set. 2 chairs for the hosts, 6 chairs for BTS, all facing the audience. Studio lights beamed down like interrogation lamps. The crowd was live, hand-picked, and full of media insiders, social commentators, and a few fans with cold, cautious eyes. The countdown began. The theme music faded. and the world watched. "Welcome," the host said, her voice smooth, dangerous. "Tonight we're joined by the most talked about artists in the world, BTS." There were no smiles, no choreographed bows, just nods, straight into fire. The first question came fast. "To Jungkook and Jimin, what exactly is the nature of your relationship?" Jimin hesitated. Jungkook didn't. "We're in love." The silence was electric. The host arched an eyebrow. "Romantically?" "Yes," Jungkook said. Jimin looked at him, eyes wide. But then, slowly, he nodded. "Yes." The second host jumped in. "And you hid this for how long?" "Years," Jimin answered. "While performing songs about heartbreak, about brotherhood, about devotion to fans you were lying?" Jin spoke then. "They were protecting themselves from a system that punishes truth." "But doesn't the truth matter to fans?" the host pressed. "Don't they have a right to know who they're supporting?" Namjoon leaned forward. "They have a right to understand us, not own us." The host changed direction. "To Taehyung, there are rumors you left the group temporarily." "Why?" Taehyung didn't blink. "Because I felt invisible. Because I was angry. And because I needed to remember who I was, outside of the group. And now, I'm still remembering." Yoongi spoke next, his voice like gravel. "People want us to be one thing, but we're not. We're artists. We're brothers. We're human. That means we change. We fail. We come back." "Do you regret coming out?" the host asked Jungkook directly. "No," he said. "I regret waiting so long." "And the backlash? The fans you lost?" He looked at the camera. "If you only loved us when we were pretending, then you never really loved us." The final question was brutal. "To all of you, do you think BTS can survive this?" Namjoon stood. He didn't speak for a full 5 seconds. Then, "BTS isn't just a group. It's a promise. And promises don't survive by being perfect. They survive by being true." The silence that followed was louder than applause. The broadcast ended. No cheers. No bows. Just truth. Raw. Bleeding. Unfiltered. Backstage, no one said anything for a long time. Then Jimin exhaled. "We did it." Jungkook reached for his hand. This time, in front of everyone, Jin wiped his eyes without saying a word. Taehyung looked up at the ceiling, blinking back emotion. Yoongi muttered, "That's going to either save us or kill us." Namjoon looked around at all of them. "No matter what happens," he said, "we set it on our terms." The next morning, the internet was chaos. But something strange happened. Not silence, not just outrage, but unity. Fan-made videos spliced together their most vulnerable answers. Hashtags trended in support. Old fans returned. New ones appeared. And somewhere in Seoul, a billboard lit up with the words, "They chose truth. We choose them." BTS wasn't saved, but they were seen. And sometimes, that's where survival begins. The city felt louder now, not because of cheers or protests, but because of the silence between all the noise, an eerie kind of stillness, like the air right after a bomb goes off. You hear nothing, but everything's changed. For 3 days, Seoul held its breath. The broadcast had shattered records. The numbers were staggering. Over 80 million people had watched the interview live. Another 120 million had streamed the replays within 48 hours. BTS wasn't just trending. They had become the center of a global conversation about fame, love, identity, betrayal, and truth. News outlets from Tokyo to New York aired panel discussions. Politicians made statements. Religious leaders offered commentary. Fan bases clashed and collided like tectonic plates, triggering emotional earthquakes across social media. But inside the big hit headquarters, the mood was suffocating. The boys had been called in again not to be congratulated, not to be praised, but to be examined. They sat in a long, narrow conference room at the top floor. The walls were glass. The table was too big. The temperature was cold despite the summer sun burning outside. Jungkook sat on the far left, dressed in black, hands trembling slightly beneath the table. Jimin was beside him, arms folded, body tight like a coil. Namjoon had his notebook open but hadn't written a single thing. Jin stared at the door, jaw locked. Yoongi leaned back in his chair, visibly unimpressed. Taehyung, who had just come back days earlier, looked like he was still unsure whether he wanted to be there at all. The door opened. CEO Bang walked in, flanked by legal advisors, 2 brand consultants, and the new global marketing director. No one smiled. "Let's begin," he said. "No greetings, no pleasantries. Just business. First, let me be clear," Bang said, sitting. "You've created something unstoppable. The interview has become a cultural moment. But you've also created a crisis." "Wasn't it already a crisis?" Yoongi said without looking at anyone. "Not like this," one of the consultants said. "You've politicized the brand. You've attached BTS to ideas that are divisive sexuality, rebellion, anti-establishment tones." "Truth isn't rebellion," Namjoon said calmly. "Maybe not to you," the marketing director replied. "But to people with money? To conservative markets across Asia, the Middle East, to the US South? It is. You've turned your image into a battleground." Jin spoke next. "What exactly are you asking us to do?" The room hesitated. Then Bang said it. "We need clarity." "What kind of clarity?" Jimin asked. "We need to know if this relationship," Bang motioned to Jungkook and Jimin, "is permanent." Jungkook's eyes narrowed. "Why does that matter?" "Because if it's temporary, we can shape the narrative around it. If it's permanent, we have to recalibrate everything." Jimin's jaw dropped. "You want us to quantify our relationship for profit? It's not personal." "The hell it's not," Jungkook cut in. "You're asking us if we plan to stay together so you can decide if it's worth backing us." "It's not about worth," the legal advisor said. "It's about risk. So if we broke up today," Jimin said, voice trembling, "you'd start investing again?" Bang didn't answer. The silence was answer enough. Taehyung laughed, a bitter sound. "So that's what we are now? A couple's marketing liability?" Yoongi scoffed. "They never cared what we felt, only how we sold." Namjoon leaned forward. "Let me make this clear. We didn't do that interview to start a rebrand. We did it because we were drowning. You may think we've created chaos, but we're finally breathing." "I understand," Bang said, "but the company needs to breathe too. We have contracts to honor. Global partners, shareholders." "You mean money," Jungkook said flatly. Bang looked at him. "Yes." For a long time, no one said anything. Then Jungkook stood. "Then here's your clarity." He looked at Jimin, and something shifted between them, something unshakable, like a decision being sealed in real time. "I'm not going anywhere," Jungkook said. "If that means less money, fewer sponsors, smaller venues, fine. But I'm not undoing myself just to make anyone else comfortable." Jimin stood next to him. "Neither am I." Yoongi clapped once. "Well, there's your answer." Bang sighed. "This will affect everything." "So be it," Jin said. "We need time to think," the marketing director said. "Take your time," Namjoon said. "We're not moving." Back in the van, the mood was silent again. But it wasn't hopeless. It was something else. Resolve. When they got back to the dorms, they found a letter waiting for them. No return address. Just a cream-colored envelope with a handwritten note on the front. "You saved my life. Thank you. I believe in you." Inside was a small pin, a replica of the BTS logo reshaped into a heart. Jimin held it in his hand, fingers trembling. Jungkook looked at it, then at him. "You okay?" "No," Jimin whispered. "But I think we're starting to be." Later that night, they went live again. Just them. No lighting crew, no fancy backdrop. Just a phone, a couch, and 6 voices. They read letters from fans, some supportive, some filled with pain. They answered questions. They laughed. They cried. Jungkook sang softly. Jimin talked about fear. Taehyung admitted he still wasn't sure what he was doing, but he was doing it with them. Jin made jokes that were terrible. Yoongi read a new poem. Namjoon closed the live with something simple. Love isn't a scandal. Being broken isn't betrayal. And choosing yourself shouldn't cost everything. But sometimes it does. So if we're going to pay that price, at least we'll do it together. The screen went black, but for once, the world didn't feel like it was watching to punish them. It felt like it was waiting to understand them. The war wasn't over. But for the first time, it wasn't BTS against the world. It was BTS in the world. No longer perfect, just real. And that was more than enough. It was past midnight when the knock came again. Only this time, it wasn't hesitant. It was sharp, firm, purposeful. Jungkook sat upright instantly, heart thudding. He'd been dozing on the couch, a half-finished lyric sheet across his chest. The others stirred from various rooms, heavy steps and half-awake voices. Jimin appeared at the end of the hallway in sweatpants and a hoodie, hair a mess, eyes red-rimmed. Yoongi was already pulling open the curtains. Jin stood with a mug of tea frozen halfway to his mouth. Namjoon rubbed his eyes, squinting toward the door. Taehyung was the one who opened it. On the other side was Minji. She looked different, not colder. Not colder like Jungkook had feared. Not angry, like he'd dreaded. No, she looked free, resigned, a little sad, but free. Everyone froze. Minji looked past Taehyung, her gaze landing on Jungkook. She didn't flinch. "Can we talk?" she said. Taehyung didn't move. "Should we leave?" "No," she said. "You should hear it too." So they let her in. Minji stepped inside like someone entering a sacred space. She took in the mismatched slippers by the door, the stack of empty ramen cups in the corner, the battered guitar on the sofa. Her eyes lingered on the wall covered in Polaroids, decade-old pictures of concerts, goofy selfies, tearful hugs, shared hotel rooms. Evidence of a life lived not perfectly, but entirely. Then she looked at Jungkook. "I thought I hated you," she said. "For a while. When I saw the video, when I read the comments, when people started calling me the cover story, I thought I hated everything about you." He didn't respond. He couldn't. She continued. "But then I watched the live. All of them. I watched the interview. I listened to the silence between your words. I watched your face when you looked at him." She turned her head, met Jimin's eyes. "I saw the pain. And the love. And the guilt." Jimin swallowed. "Minji, I'm not here for an apology," she said, holding up a hand. "I'm not here to be vindicated or to punish anyone. I'm here to say, I get it now." Everyone stood still. "I don't want my name in your story anymore," she said, voice steady. "Not as the girl you almost married, not as the lie you tried to build a future on. I want my own story now." Jungkook's voice finally returned, ragged and low. "I never meant to hurt you." "But you did," she replied. "I know. I don't forgive you," she said softly. "Not yet, but I understand you." A pause. Then she added, "And I hope you don't waste what you fought so hard to protect." Her eyes flicked toward Jimin. Jungkook nodded. "I won't." Minji smiled, sad and real. "Good." She turned to leave, then stopped at the door. "Oh," she said. "And Jungkook?" "Yes." "I kept the ring." He blinked. "Why?" "Because even mistakes deserve to be remembered." Then she left. No one spoke for a long time. Jin sat down first, then Yoongi. Then Taehyung walked back to the window, opened it wide, and let the night air in. Jungkook didn't sit. He turned to Jimin. His voice was soft, but unwavering. "I want us to move forward, not just as this," he gestured between them, "but as a part of us. All of us. No more half-lives. No more walking ahead while pretending not to look back." Jimin stepped forward. "Then say it, out loud." Jungkook met his eyes. "I love you. I love you too." The others didn't clap. They didn't need to, Taehyung said. "That's it then," Jin chuckled. "What's it?" "The last lie just left this house." Namjoon looked at the group. "That it's time we step back into the world." But the world was not done testing them. The next morning, the email came. It wasn't from Bang. It wasn't from any of the label staff. It was from the CEO of a global cosmetics conglomerate that had been one of their biggest sponsors for 5 years. The subject line was simple: termination of partnership. BTS 10, Adore Skincare. The body of the email wasn't long. It cited irreconcilable brand alignment and public controversy as reasons for the severance. But the worst part was the closing line. "We wish BTS continued success, but must prioritize partnerships that reflect our values." Yoongi slammed his laptop shut so hard it echoed. Namjoon didn't blink. Jin stood up and walked outside without a word. Jungkook read the email again. And again. And then he laughed. Not out of amusement, but disbelief. "They think they represent values," he said, still smiling bitterly. "What about ours?" Jimin leaned over his shoulder, read the line, and whispered, "Let them go." Yoongi spoke through gritted teeth. "That's the third this week. And it won't be the last, Namjoon said.
But it doesn't matter.
It does, Jin said, walking back in. Because money builds this. No, Namjoon said. We build this. And that's when the idea was born. The moment the traditional world slammed one more door in their face, BTS decided to build a new one. No corporate intermediaries. No safe, clean, palatable campaigns. Just them. They called it Project Echo. A direct-to-fan digital ecosystem. Their music, their truth, their content. No filters, no edits, no gatekeepers. A global platform that connected directly to ARMY without interference. It was Jimin's idea to call it that. Because we speak, he said, and they echo us. But now, we want to echo them back. It launched 2 weeks later. The world watched. Again. And this time, it didn't burn them. It lifted them. One by one, fans returned. Not all. But enough. The old ones. The new ones. The quiet ones. The angry ones who came back crying. The hurt ones who sent letters saying, I still love you even if it took me time. They uploaded raw songs, conversations, confessions, behind-the-scenes footage that wasn't curated. Lyrics written in the middle of breakdowns. Videos of Jin crying, Taehyung laughing, Jungkook writing a song called Bruise and Bloom. They didn't market a new comeback. They lived one. And ARMY responded. By the millions. But most importantly, so did they. In a quiet moment, 3 weeks after the launch, Jimin stood at the edge of their studio rooftop, staring at the skyline. Jungkook joined him, 2 mugs of tea in his hands. You okay? Jungkook asked. I don't know, Jimin said. But for the first time in years, I feel me. They stood in silence. Then Jimin asked, what if it all ends tomorrow? Jungkook handed him a mug. Then we'll still have today. And today? Today was real. Today was enough. It was only after everything burned that they remembered what it felt like to sing. Not for cameras, not for endorsements, not for a stadium packed with light sticks and choreographed cheers, but for the silence, for themselves. The room they chose wasn't a recording studio. It wasn't a rehearsal hall. It was a vacant theater in Seoul's Gangbuk district. Dust hung in the air like stage glitter from a forgotten era. Rows of velvet seats sat empty, faded from years of performances long past. The scent of wood, aging curtains, and cracked vinyl seeped into their clothes the minute they walked in. No cameras followed them. No staff prepared their arrival. This was for them. Their own moment. Their own return. Yoongi stood center stage first, testing his foot against the old floorboards as if it might cave beneath him. It didn't. He exhaled. Then looked back. We used to rehearse in places like this, he said, before they put us on marble floors and called us legends. Jin sat on the edge of the stage, legs dangling. I remember one where the lights didn't work. We rehearsed with the emergency flashlight on. Jimin laughed. And the sound system crackled every time someone hit a high note. We didn't need perfect acoustics back then, Jungkook said. Just each other. Taehyung moved to one of the dusty pianos at stage left, ran his fingers over the keys. They stuck, out of tune and rusty. But he played anyway. Slow, melancholy, real. Namjoon stepped into the center of the group. We're not here to remember. We're here to begin again. He held up a small camcorder. Not a professional rig. No live stream. No filters. Just a camcorder. The realest thing we've done in years, Yoongi said. They nodded. And then they sang. Not polished, not perfect, but raw. The first song was Still With You, Jungkook's solo. But this time, it wasn't solo. They turned it into a group ballad, every line passed like a baton, voices overlapping in unexpected harmony. Jimin's falsetto cracked. Yoongi rapped a new verse that wasn't planned. Taehyung's voice dipped lower than usual, like gravel and silk. Jin's emotion carried in every breath. Namjoon didn't sing. He spoke. Lines that weren't lyrics but confessions. When it ended, no one clapped. They didn't need to. It wasn't for applause. It was for oxygen. They did 3 more songs. Old ones. Spring Day. The Truth, Untold. Outro. Tear. By the last one, there were tears. No one hid them. I used to hate this song, Taehyung admitted afterward, because it felt too real. Like we were admitting we were already falling apart. And now? Namjoon asked. Now it feels like a love letter. They sat on the edge of the stage after that. All 6 of them. Backs to the empty theater, looking out at the ghost of every fan who had ever screamed their names. Do you think they'll forgive us? Jimin asked. Yoongi lit a cigarette. It's not about forgiveness. Then what? It's about faith, he said. If we keep walking, maybe they'll keep walking too. Jungkook wiped his face. I used to think we were invincible, like the fame made us untouchable. Jin smiled softly. It didn't. It made us mirrors. Namjoon looked out at the emptiness.
Then maybe it's time we break the mirror and just be.
It was then that the door at the back of the theater creaked open. They all turned. It was Bang. He walked in slowly, hands in the pockets of a long black coat, his expression unreadable. He didn't speak for a while, just looked at the stage, at the 6 of them. I watched the footage, he said finally. What you recorded today. Thought you might? Jin said. Bang walked down the aisle. I don't know if it'll save the brand. We're not saving the brand, Yoongi said. We're saving ourselves. Bang reached the front row. Sat. You were always different, he said. Every group before you, after you, none of them ever fought like this. They accepted what they were given. You broke it. Namjoon nodded. Because what we were given was never meant to last. Bang looked at Jungkook. You ruined a lot of expectations. Jungkook stared back. They weren't mine to carry. He turned to Jimin. And you? Don't, Jimin said. Don't make me the symbol of anything. I'm just someone who loved someone at the wrong time. And now? Bang asked. There's no such thing as a wrong time if you're still standing in it. Bang stood. Then keep standing. He left without saying goodbye. The boys stayed on stage long after the sun set. The city outside buzzed with life, unaware of the 6 men sitting in the dark, reclaiming who they were. They made a decision that night. Not to retire, not to rebrand, but to return, not as idols, not as products, but as artists, as brothers, as men. The next morning, they posted the footage from the theater. No filters, no edits, no captions, just the truth. And the world responded. Not with hysteria, not with judgment, but with silence. A different kind of silence. The kind that says, we see you now, and we're still here. The kind that means healing has begun. They weren't who they were before. They weren't trying to be. They were BTS. Still. And that would always be enough. They didn't plan a farewell. There was no countdown. No final world tour. No montage of teary interviews, award show speeches, or orchestrated goodbyes. Because this wasn't an ending. This was a rebirth. It began with a letter. A single post on Project Echo, uploaded at midnight KST. The caption was short, simple, no more masks. Attached was a black and white video, filmed in the same dusty theater where they had sung to the empty seats weeks ago. But this time, the seats weren't empty. They were filled. Not with fans, not with press, not with staff or executives or stylists, but with people. Real people. Letters brought to life. They had sent out thousands of invitations through Project Echo, not to influencers or celebrities, but to fans whose stories had left dents in their hearts. The ones who had written in when their parents didn't accept them. The ones who cried through the scandal but still whispered, I miss you. The ones who tattooed lyrics on their wrists because they needed a reason to keep breathing. These weren't VIPs. These were soulmates. And BTS stood before them with no backup dancers. No lights, no outfits. Just 6 microphones, bare skin, trembling voices, and everything they had left to give. They performed Blue-Gray, and you could hear the softest sob echo across the hall. They performed Answer, Love Myself, and someone in the front row dropped to their knees. They performed Born Singer, and Taehyung's voice cracked so hard he had to pause, choking back something that wasn't just tears, it was years. Jimin took his hand, and they kept going. Jungkook sang like confession, Jin like prayer, Yoongi rapped like someone exorcising ghosts. Namjoon stood still, speaking words that trembled with grace and fatigue and gratitude. After the final note, they didn't bow. They didn't wave. They sat down at the edge of the stage. And they talked. I used to think I owed the world perfection, Jungkook said. But it turns out the world needed honesty more. I thought love would destroy this group, Jimin whispered. but the lack of it almost did. I left because I was afraid I no longer belonged, Taehyung said. But I came back because I realized belonging isn't something you're given. It's something you claim. Yoongi stared at the crowd for a long time, then, I never wanted to be a symbol, but if surviving pain makes me one, so be it. Jin spoke softly. We were always going to fall, but we chose to fall forward. Namjoon closed his eyes. When we started, we were 7 scared kids holding on to a dream we didn't believe we deserved. Now we're 6 scarred men carrying a truth we almost didn't survive. But we're here. Not as perfect idols, but as people. And then the most unexpected thing happened. From the crowd, a voice. Not rehearsed, not orchestrated. Just one trembling voice singing the chorus to Magic Shop. Then another joined in. Then another. Until the theater, once soaked in silence and ash and heartbreak, was filled with a chorus of voices broken, hoarse, beautiful. BTS didn't sing over them. They listened. Every note, every word, a reminder that they weren't just musicians. They were memory keepers, wound bearers, proof that vulnerability doesn't end you. It frees you. That night, they walked out into the street, not in a van, not through a back exit, but straight through the front, with fans walking beside them. No barriers, just people. A few days later, their documentary went live. Beyond the Scene. What Survived. It wasn't a retrospective. It wasn't polished. It was the rawest thing they'd ever released. Unedited footage of fights, of breakdowns, of Taehyung slamming a door, of Jungkook sobbing alone on a studio floor, of Jimin staring into a mirror, whispering, I don't know who I am anymore, of Namjoon screaming into an empty hallway, of Jin laughing through tears, of Yoongi recording the same lyric 50 times, trying to feel it again, and then of healing, of the hug that finally came, of the handheld, not for PR, but for survival, of the quiet meals, of the group lying side by side on the rooftop, staring at stars, of the moment they wrote Still BTS on a fogged window and smiled. The internet didn't explode this time. It exhaled, because the world didn't need another perfect idol. It needed people who fell, got back up, and told the truth about what it cost. Months passed. The industry changed. Some brands never returned, but others did. New ones, bolder ones, ones that wanted them not the manufactured version. And Army grew, not just in size, but in soul. They didn't chant just lyrics anymore. They carried them, lived them, protected them. BTS didn't go back to stadiums. Not immediately. They played smaller venues, released music independently, collaborated with underrepresented artists, mentored young musicians who didn't want to fake their smiles anymore. They weren't the same. They didn't want to be. Jungkook and Jimin never issued a statement about their relationship again. They didn't need to. Because love isn't a headline. It's a choice. And they chose it every day in the quiet glances, the soft harmonies, the songs that sounded like mornings after a storm. In one of their final uploads to Project Echo for the year, Yoongi sat in a studio alone. He said, I used to think the most powerful sound was a stadium screaming our name, but it's not. He turned to the camera. It's the silence that stays after the song ends. The silence where you decide if what you heard changed you. He let the quiet linger, then smiled. Fade to black. On the 1-year anniversary of their live confession, the entire group posted one photo. It wasn't posed. It wasn't filtered. It was just the 6 of them, sitting in a circle on a rooftop, barefoot, laughing. The caption was one word: home. And for millions around the world, that was exactly what BTS had become again. Not an illusion, not a symbol, not a brand, but home. And they were finally home, too.